All right. Well, good evening, everyone. Like I said, welcome back to another edition of the Beyond Access series. My name is Balaish. I am the Family Empowerment Communications Coordinator for the New York City Department of Education in the Special Education Office, and I will be your host tonight. We are very excited for tonight's session, which is the second part of the three-part series brought to you by the Just Say Hi, the award-winning disability inclusion PK-12 school-based program run by the Cerebral Palsy Foundation. We're also, of course, very excited to have Greenie Dixon be joining us again for these sessions as our American Sign Language interpreter. Now, tonight's session, titled Adapting to Support Learning at Home, will be led by two amazing speakers, and we'll be discussing ways to adapt to support academic success at home. But before we get started, just a few housekeeping notes. As usual, as a general reminder, there will be no chat function during the session, but the Q&A function will be on for you to ask questions throughout the presentation, and we'll try to answer as many questions throughout the session, but we do set a time, some time at the end as well to answer all those questions in real time. As always, this session will be recorded and posted on our YouTube page the following day. So do not worry if you miss any content throughout today's presentation. We'll make sure that it's on our YouTube page and you will be notified via recap email tomorrow. So you'll be able to see the entire thing. And also, just so you know, any links or materials or recordings that we discuss and what you would like to have more access to, we will also send that out in the recap email tomorrow as well. Now, as I mentioned earlier, tonight's session will be led by two different speakers. This first speaker, as you've seen from last week, is Debbie Fink, the Vice President of Education and Inclusion at Cerebral Palsy Foundation. And then we're very delighted to have follow up our second guest speaker, Jacqueline Wentworth, an occupational therapist, who we are very excited to have here tonight and who will be diving more deeper into the topic. But without any further ado, I'm going to hand it over to Debbie.
Thank you so much, Ori. Hi, everyone. It's always such a pleasure to be here on the Beyond Access platform with our coveted partners at NYC DOE. As Ori introduced me already, I typically do the if you were here with us last week or last spring, we start at just by noting 3 best practices. The first best practice is an audio description that serves people who are low vision or blind. And that's where I say, I am a white woman with shoulder-length brown hair, wearing glasses, seated in front of a banner that says, "Just say hi." And please make sure to learn about the program, as Ori mentioned, and bring it to your schools. Talk to your principal, your school counselor, your superintendent, because we'd love to bring it into your schools. The second best practice is Greenie Dixon leading us through this whole experience tonight through ASL, American Sign Language. Please make sure that she is in your frame for the whole evening, because it really deepens the essence of what we are doing here tonight, which is disability inclusion. The third best practice is always practice, which is on Beyond Access, which is the closed captioning. Excuse me. And that serves people who are deaf, hard of hearing, English as second language learners, as well as people who simply process information better when we can read along. All right. So with that done, tonight is Adapting to Support Learning at Home for Students with Disabilities, part 2 of our 3-part series. And I have to say that the mantra for this series is presume competence, meaning always assume that your child is capable and able to learn or to do a certain task until proven otherwise. And even with that, you can revisit it at different points along the journey. And expect this of all adults who interact with your child. All adults should be presuming competence. Love this quote. Everyone, regardless of ability or disability, has strengths and weaknesses. All of us. Know what your child's strengths are and build on these strengths and find a way around their weaknesses. That's quote by Brad Cohen, who was Georgia State First Year Teacher of the Year and author of the book, Front of the Class, How Tourette Syndrome Made Me the Teacher I Never Had. Now, I'm so excited to introduce you to our keynote speaker, Jacqueline Wentworth. She is a pediatric occupational therapist, content contributor for CPF's CP Resources, and she is an Instagram disability inclusion influencer, and she can be followed and found at JACROSE on Instagram. Jacqueline, take it away.
Thank you so much, Debbie. Hello, everyone. I'm Jacqueline. I am a white woman with shoulder-length curly hair and brown eyes. I'm so excited to be here tonight. I have been a pediatric occupational therapist for over 10 years, and I have cerebral palsy that affects both of my legs and my left arm. So some of the things I'm going to be talking about tonight may not be directly related to academics, but more how you can help your disabled child live in this world so they can feel good on the inside and therefore they can engage better in the academic setting. So some people get confused kind of what occupational therapy is because of the word occupations. So occupations means anything that brings you meaning and purpose. So for children, that's playing, that's going to school and coloring and using stickers, that's engaging with family and friends, and that's doing activities of daily living such as feeding yourself and dressing yourself. So as I will be talking about specific adaptations you can make, my main theme is how you can help your child fulfill their occupations so they have meaning and purpose. If they feel good about themselves, then they will be ready to perform in school. I also will be flipping between identity first and person first language because as a disability community, we like both. Next slide, please. So understanding intersectionality. So intersectionality is the ways in which systems of inequality based on underrepresented communities intersect to create unique dynamics and effect. So it's very important to understand that if your child is disabled, they are a part of a marginalized community. So I am white, my parents are white, my sister is white. They are not a part of a marginalized community, but I am. And I think that is very important for people to understand because they live in a world where it was created for them, and I live in a world that wasn't created for me. So it's very important for parents to understand that. In addition, if you are a part of a marginalized community, understand that your child is dealing with intersectionality where they are a part of two or more marginalized groups. And this goes into understanding the laws and the rights. I think it's very important to understand all the laws that affect disabled people, and everything that we had to fight tooth and nail for, and to understand the history. For example, there were the anti-ugly laws that were in effect until 1975. This meant that if you were deemed too deformed or ugly looking, then you would be fined and then you would be put in jail until you could pay that fine. And since we weren't granted the rights to equal education until 1975, many disabled people couldn't pay that and were jailed because of that. And that did not go away until 1975. This was my parents were alive when that happened. So I think it's very important to understand how we got here. And in saying that, with the medical model, most of what was created for disabled people did not include disabled people, which is a lot of our treatments and a lot of the language that is used, which is why that you'll see that we constantly talk that disabled adults like the word disability. We are disabled, we're proud to be disabled. It's an empowering word. It is not a bad word. In general, we don't like the term special needs. Disabled people did not come up with that term. Our needs are not special. my need of not slipping in the shower, so I have a grab bar, is not a special need. So that is why we, in general, do not like that term, and we just like to use disabled. Next slide, please. More actionable ways to support learning at home. Prevention. So anyone who knows me knows that I stole the Boy Scouts motto of always be prepared. I have a first aid kit at home in my car and one that I travel with in my bag at all times. I find it very important as a disabled person to always be prepared. And that includes your doctor's appointments, prescribed medicines. I think it's important if your child's able to have them be a part of when they have to take their certain medications, and if it's an as needed medication, to help them figure out the signs of when they would need to take this medication. Vitamins and nutrition is very important. I feel like it's important that I have the appropriate nutrition to help my body. Exercise, sleep, rest, mental health, wellness. I'm a huge proponent of therapy, protective eye gear, and ergonomic positions in home and sleep. So self-determination. So when of age your child should be involved in medical decisions if possible. I think it's really important for your child to be involved in those and therapy so they don't feel like everything is being done to them. If they are unable to be a part of that, then you really want to prepare them. I like to use a lot of kinesthetic cues. If the child is having surgery, you're going to have anesthesia, you're going to go to sleep, they're going to cut your wrist, you're going to have a cast on that, and have a lot of touching and things so they are prepared for what's about to happen. Could more actionable ways to support learning at home. Could versus should is my favorite lesson that I learned as a disabled person. So this is when you have to figure out the things you can do, but then should you do them? So in your teen years, in your early 20s, that is when you have to do all the experiment and you have to figure out your limits. And that's what I find is the hardest for parents. It's very hard for parents to see their child struggle, but you need to allow your child to struggle so they can figure out what they can do. I think a really great example of this for me is that I love to travel. I've been traveling alone since I was 18, and I had to figure out how much can I pack? What can I carry? How can I get from place to A to B? And there was many times where I was lugging my suitcases, and a lot of my friends and family called me stubborn because they were uncomfortable watching me struggle with my suitcase. Now at 35 years old, I don't touch my suitcase, and there's lots of people around me who will bring it for me and put it the places that I need to. However, because I did that last year when I was in Penn Station, and I followed all the signs for the elevator, and then I got to the elevator and the elevator was shut down. And then I got to the escalator and the escalator was shut down. I was alone at the bottom of 2 flights of steps. But because I was stubborn as a teenager, I knew that I could get up the flight of stairs, even if it took me 3 minutes and I had to go one step at a time with my bag, that I could do it. And I wasn't freaking out, and I did it. So I think that's really important. I know I can do it, but I don't always do it because I don't want to waste that energy. So seeking out community support. I think for parents, it's great for you to seek out parents with children of disabilities for your own emotional support. I understand it's very difficult to have a child with a disability, and it's wonderful for you to seek out support for yourself. If you're trying to find out more information on how to help your child, that's when you want to seek out disabled adults. And now with social media, there are so many of us on both Instagram and TikTok that are educating parents on how to help your child. General tips for adapting a home. Setting up a quiet workplace. But also note that sometimes children do work better with music or some background TV noise. I know that pretty much all of my friends with ADHD really like to have the TV on in the background. So, you know, if a child asks to do that, I would allow them to do that and see if that works for them. Also, something that's very important is for their feet to always be touching the ground. When you're doing fine motor activities, you need to be grounded. So if you're writing, your feet should be touching something in order to being able to appropriately engage in fine motor skills. And so just a disclaimer, anything that I recommend, we are not receiving any financial compensation. These are just things that I have recommended throughout my career. And every single one of my friends with a child has this chair. So this is the Trip Trap chair. I love it because it grows with the child and you can move the seat and the foot plates. So it grows with the child and their feet are always touching something. And this would slide in to a typical kitchen table. You don't have to get this chair. You could also use a stool, use a box, anything that you would like, so their feet are touching a surface. So these are a list of 8 specific adaptations. Although your child may not fit into every category, there are a lot of useful information that may be helpful. So specific home adaptions for auditory for children who are deaf, hard of hearing, with or without hearing aids or cochlear implants. Using closed caption as a standard in the home. So if you know your child needs closed captioning and they have asked many times to use closed captioning, but they always have to ask when you're watching a movie, it is not going to make your child feel good. I know if I have to ask the same person the same thing multiple times, I start to feel like a burden, and I feel like I know they don't want to do it because they know that I need it at this point. So that should be something that is a standard if you know your child needs it. Also, this is a great way to promote accommodations. If you're at someone's house and you see them watching a movie, that would be a great learning experience where you could say, oh, hey, you know, we use closed captioning. It helps with this. And then that would help for your child to also promote for themselves in the future. If your child uses ASL, all families should learn ASL. And using ASL interpreters, as we have a wonderful one today. Note that, you know, it's always important to get ASL interpreters for important things like doctor's appointments and IEP, but also we want to think about fun things like concerts, because this is an occupation that brings meaning and purpose. And if you have meaning and purpose, you will feel better in school. And here is a wonderful example of that.
Interpreter who is now a sensation online.
The sign language interpreter is helping those who are deaf enjoy the Pride festivities in a whole new way. CBS 46's Ayani Hughes has the story.
Some may say it's impossible to outshine Beyonce or her dance moves at her own concert, but one Atlanta interpreter gave her a run for her money. Meet David Cowan, the star of this lively video that's exploded on social media. The 55-year-old man is a freelance sign language interpreter out of East Atlanta, whose expressive interpretation of Get Me Bodied by Beyonce and jubilant dance moves at the Atlanta Pride Festival had fans applauding all around.
No, it was a shock for me, but it was nice at the same time.
David tells me he chose this platform because it's often difficult for people who are deaf to watch the interpreter and then look over at the performer at the same time. So he uses his dance moves to help fill that void.
So I can see the performer out of the corner of my eye, and I can adapt and assume some of those motions and some of that energy into my interpretation, into my rendering. And fortunately, I have the moves to be able to do it.
Just for that, people have titled him the dancing hero. David says the viral video got much more attention than he ever expected, but considers it a blessing to represent his peers and ensure the deaf audience is just as included and into the experience as everyone else. David has been signing at Pride for nearly 2 decades now, and he tells me he looks forward to breaking out some moves at Pride again next year. Reporting in Midtown, Ayana Hughes, CBS 46 News.
Oh my
I'm
goodness.
loving all of that.
That is the best. Loving it.
I love that video. I am not deaf, but I can only imagine what a wonderful experience that would be to experience a concert for the first time like that. So we're going to go back into specific home adaptations for cognitive. This is for children who have cognitive disabilities. So provide choices. This is also helpful for many different children. And this empowers your child and encourages them to complete the task. When you're providing the choice, both of them are a choice that you would like them to choose. So you are kind of already making it, but it really helps them feel empowered. Granting appropriate wait time is probably one of the most important lessons I've learned as being an OT, and something that I always teach new OT fieldwork students. Many times kids need a longer time to process the information. I had a patient who has autism, and I worked with him for 4 years, and he had a very difficult time communicating. And the mom said the team realized, if you wait for 30 seconds, then he can answer that question. And for me, this is something that was always very hard because, we always want to do things quick and efficient, especially as New Yorkers. We're always like, get things done, 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 done. So when she said 30 seconds, I was like, oh, that's going to be a little hard for me. So I would literally count to 30 in my head. And by golly, I will say about 8 out of 10 times he was able to answer the question after that. And I really realized how important it is to slow down and give children time to process. Specific home adaptations dexterity. So this is for children with fine motor skills that are not the same as their classmates, so using their hands. So I don't think many people would think engaging in full body exercises for fine motor, but remember, everything is connected. So if your core is weak, then you're going to have a hard time sitting up and doing fine motor tasks. So we always talk going from proximal to distal. So if your shoulder, upper arm, and forearm are weak, then it's going to affect your hand. So this is why we want full gross motor and weight-bearing activities in order to help with your fine motor activities. Also, practice tasks that require dexterity. You want to practice tasks that require dexterity. So you want to find things that kind of fit in to your day. So it doesn't have to be, oh, we're going to sit down and do therapy. So things like cooking and baking or doing laundry. Think about if your kid sat with you twice a week and helped you ball all your socks for a year. That's so much dexterity that your child would be working on. So that's kind of how we want to think about therapy. Also, besides that, we also want to do things that are fun. So on our next slide, I have these games that are in order for kind of age appropriate order. So Pop-Up Pirate is one of my favorite ones. It's a great bimanual activity. You have to hold the barrel and then put the sword in, and kids just like to shove that sword in so the barrel goes flying around, and then they need to figure it out. So it's always a wonderful learning process. And then we have Avalanche, which is a game that has a tweezer. Any game with tweezers is great. Don't Break the Ice is one of my favorite games because it's actually very difficult to set up. It's a great bimanual activity game. It's very kind of difficult to set up, but the kids are so motivated by the fact that they got to break it afterwards that they don't realize it. And if I was a bad OT, I could sit there for 45 minutes just playing Don't Break the Ice because they love it and it's a great activity. Kerplunk is very similar. It's a great game to set up. Mancala, I played this half my childhood. This is a great game for in-palm translation because you have to hold all of the pebbles and then drop one in at a time. And then also card games, I put Exploding Kittens because they now have all fun, silly card games instead of just, you know, a regular card deck. So those are also great for fine motor activities. Specific home adaptations for mental health disabilities for children who struggle with anxiety, depression, OCD, ADHD, bipolar, schizophrenia, or other mental health disabilities that impact their daily lives. According to the American Psychological Association and the CDC, the pandemic has brought on a mental health disability crisis among children and youths. Mental health disabilities are impacting more than 1 out of 5 children and youth since the pandemic, and this can qualify as a disability under the Americans with Disability Act. It's very important to secure appropriate therapy. I understand that a mental health disability diagnosis with a child can be super difficult to handle, but just know that you are not alone, especially with the information that I just shared about the pandemic. And I hope that gives you strength to get the therapy that your child needs and the support they need in order for them to be successful in the future. Breathing exercises. I've been using breathing exercises almost my entire life. This is wonderful to YouTube and kind of find what works best for you. Encourage brain dumping. This is something I've actually recently learned. This is great for at night where your child can just make space and dump all of their thoughts and worries and lingering questions. They can either do this on paper, they can draw it, they can tell you, or they can record it. And so also doing different mindfulness activities. So the next video I'm going to show you is thought bubbles. And this comes from the YouTube channel, The Mental Health Teacher, which also has a lot of great other videos if you would like to look at after.
Thought bubbles. This mindfulness practice will help you to control your thoughts. Sit comfortably in your chair or on the floor, whichever your teacher prefers. Each day, we have thousands of thoughts. Scientists say we have at least one thought every 2 seconds. That's at least 40,000 thoughts a day. Some of those thoughts are ideas. Some are memories, things we learn, or opinions. Our minds are amazing, and thinking is what makes humans so great. But sometimes we get too many thoughts in our heads, and this can make us feel worried, tired, or even angry. Imagine that thoughts are like bubbles. They pop into your head. They grow and float around for a couple of seconds and then pop and disappear. Some thoughts don't pop and go away though. They keep growing and stay floating around your mind for days. These big thought bubbles are usually questions that cause us to worry, such as, who will play with me at playtime? What are they whispering about? Will I get an invite to the birthday party? Mindfulness helps us to blow away some of those bubbles that we don't need. We don't need to worry. It doesn't help with anything. Having fewer thought bubbles clears your mind and makes space for learning new things at school. Listen to the quiet music and breathe normally. When you see a thought bubble come into Bertie Brain's mind, then do a deep breath to blow it away. Remember, when we do deep breaths, just your belly should be moving, not your shoulders. Continue breathing normally and listen to the music. We shouldn't hear your breath because this means you're breathing too quickly. Well done. Now, for the last minute, listen to the quiet music, and when a thought comes into your head, do a deep breath to blow it away, just like we did for Bertie Brain.
So that I love those types of things, and that could be used also as an adult. Although this is made for children, I use many on myself because I'm always looking for resources for children. And also something else that I wanted to say was, please note that pretty much every disability has a high comorbidity of depression and anxiety. I know with cerebral palsy, we're about 4 times more likely to have depression and anxiety than a typical person. So I think that's something important to note. Also, so another wonderful mental health resource now is the 988 Lifeline and chat functions. This is a suicide and crisis lifeline, and this can be used by children and adults, and it also has a texting function, which teens really seem to like, and this is something that they can use in school. I find this to be really important. I have used it myself when I have gone through a difficult time. And I think that these types of things are very important to share and talk about if you feel comfortable, because this is how we get rid of the mental health stigma. And I'm proud of myself for calling when I was having a difficult time, because I love my friends and family, but a lot of times they want to give advice. And this is just people to listen and to be there for you. And I find a lot of strength in that. And I hope if you're ever at a spot that you call 988. So specific home adaptions mobility. If I could get rid of all the area rugs in the world, I would. I have seen my life flash before my eyes many times because of rugs. I understand in apartments, there are actually some rules that, like, sometimes you need a certain amount covered by rugs. The thicker, heavier rugs are typically better. It's the smaller rugs, or the ones with tassels, or the ones that move easily, that really for all disabilities are just not helpful. I have not one rug in my home. Also, something that is really important is to promote and encourage mobility devices to preserve energy and enjoy life. Something that I see often from parents and people with disabilities is they feel like a mobility device is giving up, but it's actually the exact opposite. If I'm at a fair with my mom and we're walking around and I'm using all of my energy to walk, then I'm not enjoying the fair. My mom gets to eat the funnel cake, she gets to go on all the rides, she gets to play the games, but I'm so exhausted from walking that I can't enjoy that. And that's not the purpose of the fair. The purpose of the fair is not for me to get an exercise, it's for me to enjoy the fair. So I encourage people to get scooters or get different mobility devices so they can enjoy their life. Now, when I travel, I use a wheelchair every time, even though I can walk long distances, because what I realized is I want to save that energy for my traveling. I want to save that for a hike. I don't want to use that walking around, an airport that's the size of a small city. So I really promote using different mobility devices. Home adaptation sensory. This is for children who are sensitive to or triggered by sensory stimulation. You can try different flexible seating options. The therapy ball or the BOSU ball, the therapy ball, physio ball, yoga ball, whatever you like to call it. They have like seats that you can put them in so a child can kind of bounce and move, but not kind of roll all the way around. So those are always really great. And thinking of identifying different sensory triggers. Something that I've realized as an adult with many friends with autism is that sensitivity to smell is something that I know affects a lot of them. I have one friend who asked me not to wear perfume when I see her because it really bothers her. And I have another friend, they always carry their own soap because they cannot handle the smells of all the soaps. So I think that's just something to kind of keep in the back of your mind. I know sometimes it's really hard to figure out what's triggering your child. So that and fluorescent lights tend to be high. So just kind of something to keep in mind. Implementing a calm bedtime routine. Again, this could be useful for many children. Trying to not allow electronics about 1 hour before bedtime. And not that you have to do everything in this routine, but I kind of did it from activity to no activity. So brushing your teeth, having a bath or a shower, nice warm one, a massage with lotion. And if they can handle scent, lavender is very calming. Quiet play, then reading a book or poetry, and then singing some of your favorite lullabies. We skipped a video. So this is an example. This is a Lycra sheet. I love this. So this is a white, I would say 10-year-old girl. She is laying in a bed with a sheet that is wrapped around the entire bed that is form-fitting, and she is crawling underneath it to get proprioceptive input. This is great to sleep in, and this could also be wonderful just as an activity to use for them to calm down and get some proprioceptive input. Selective home adaptation, speech and language. This is for students with speech and language and auditory processing, language processing, and or pragmatic difficulties or challenges. So learning how to use alternative and augmentative communication devices, AAC, I think this is very important. I often see people not wanting to use this because they think it's going to stop their children from speaking, but I think it's the exact opposite. If your child cannot communicate and they communicate by crying, and you're trying to figure out for an hour why they're crying, and then you finally realize, oh, it's because they want water. Imagine if they had something where they can press a button or give you a picture that says water, how good that's going to feel, where they're like, oh, wow, I can communicate this need and I don't have to feel this thirst. And then I think once they understand communication, the speaking will come. If a child's going to speak, they're going to speak. An AAC device is not going to stop that. And home adaptations for visual. This is for children who are low vision or blind. Keeping things in permanent places is very important. And this would also be a good thing to remind teachers or maybe family members or friends' homes that they go over often. Also be very careful about where you leave shoes. That's pretty much for all disabled people. And then also, as we know, for kids, social media is really important. So using audio descriptions, an example, what Debbie and I did prior, we described ourselves and how I was describing what was going on when the girl was using the Lycra sheets. And then image descriptions, which you'll see an example in a second. And then also using camel case for hashtags. So this is great to model. So hopefully if you'll model it, your friends and family will also use it. And camel case for hashtags is so readers can translate it correctly. So as you see, I wrote example of camel case and all the letters of a new word are capitalized so an e-reader can read it. Typically when you write hashtags, they're all lowercase, so e-readers cannot read them. So our next slide, this is from Disability Empower Her Network. It's an organization I'm involved with disabled women who mentor disabled girls. We do a 1-week survival camp and then we mentor them for a year. It's a wonderful program and I suggest looking it up. And this is an example of an image description on the bottom. It says young leader Ace, a white disabled person, works with ally Kelly, a white non-disabled woman, to build a fire. Summary, what we can do for our children, always presume competence. As we said multiple times, I think if there's one takeaway from this, it would be to accept that your child is disabled and to help your child accept that they're disabled and to learn to cope with it. If you cannot accept and you cannot cope with the fact that you were disabled, it's going to be very difficult to function in this world. And then something I want to say quickly that we skipped is something that I like to talk about in therapy a lot for parents at home is quality versus quantity. I would much rather you have working for 3 minutes on putting on a sock and having that be good quality time of you putting on that sock rather than 20 minutes of trying to get on both socks and both shoes and just having it be so frustrating. So a solid 3 minutes is better than a frustrating 20, and that things don't have to be therapy, that they can just be things that you fit into your everyday life and they don't need to be overwhelming. When I tell parents, oh, you need to work on socks and shoes, they're like, well, I have to get 3 kids out at 7:30 in the morning. You don't need to do it at 7:30 in the morning. You can do it when they come home from school. You can make it a silly game after you put on your pajamas. We're going to put on our socks and shoes and then take them off. It doesn't have to be overwhelming. And in fact, it shouldn't be overwhelming. You really just want to fit it into your everyday life. So involving your child in decision making and really kind of planting those seeds of, hopefully you're thinking of different accommodations. You can ask them, hey, what do you think about this? And what do you think about that? So their mind can start thinking about how they can accommodate for themselves. So if they're older, they can come up with their own accommodations because that's something that we need to do. And then also accept that, you're going to make mistakes. I kind of like to say living with a disability is kind of climbing up a mountain while you're riding a roller coaster. I have kept on going up the mountain and I keep accomplishing my goals and doing new things. However, while I'm doing that, I am also on a roller coaster. So sometimes I have ups and sometimes I have lows. So I think it's really important to be proud of yourself for those ups and allow yourself to be sad with those lows and give yourself some grace because it's going to happen. So yeah, so thank you so much for listening. I appreciate everyone being here. And after Debbie, I'm here for questions.
Thank you so much, Jacqueline. That was so informative, truly. And I have to emphasize, as a parent of 3 fabulous kids, we all slip up. We all make mistakes. We all lean too far one way or the other way. And just remember that we're all on this journey together with our children, and that love and forgiveness and positivity prevail. And as Jacqueline said, grant yourself grace. Truly, it's so important. And take care of yourself. Your self-care is essential. So make space for you as best as you can. Okay, so moving to bringing Just Say Hi to your child's school. Yes, we really, really hope that this is something that you can do and will do. You can reach out to me. My email is at the end. And it's for all students with and without any disability. It's for families of students with and without disabilities. So engage your PTA, get your PTA involved to bring a family engagement session to your school. And it's for educators and staff as well, because every adult interacting with your child can benefit from upskilling. All right, it's time to join in the conversation. So next week, or not next week, in 2 weeks, right, Ori? We have the 3rd of our 3-part series for this fall, which is, the title is, I Wish My Parents Had, I Wish My Parents Hadn't, and My Parents Got This Just Right. And our keynote speaker will be Ms. Wheelchair New York 2018, Katrina Hazel, who has a fabulous story of her own to share, and to bring her thoughts and her parent. You'll hear from her parents as well. Okay, so with that said, our contact information is here, both Jacqueline and my own. So feel free to reach out. And Uri, we turn the Zoom room and mic back to you.
Thank you, Debbie. Appreciate it. And thank you, Jacqueline, for such a personal and well thought out presentation. I mean, I really appreciated it. I love that how you spoke about the mental health stigma and just bringing your own personal experience to it. I love the mountain climbing up the roller coaster. That's a very, very good description. That's really helpful. But I would love to, for everyone who's still here and watching, obviously feel free to put in any questions that you may have. This is obviously the Q&A session. We want to make sure that you have the opportunity if you want to ask Jacqueline any specific questions. We do have a question here that's pretty engaging. I'm going to make it a 2-parter because it is kind of quite long. So we'll read it right out to you, Jacqueline, and see what kind of your thoughts are. But the question is, for a child who has attention issues, how do you have them try to stay engaged and motivated during homework? I try to have him do schoolwork on a desk in a quiet room. However, he prefers laying on the floor in his bedroom, which I find is okay as long as he cooperates. He also does not respond well to giving him feedback, instruction, and support, which is obviously very frustrating as he gets really frustrated as well. What kind of advice do you have for that scenario?
Well, maybe something I would start off with is trying a timer. You could look at different apps or even on YouTube where they have like different visual timers for children. So for example, and you would start off slow, like maybe even 5 minutes. So start off being like, okay, we're just going to do 5 minutes or whatever you think is appropriate for a child of work. And, or it could be a regular timer, whatever works, and kind of start with that. So then they maybe feel like it's not so overwhelming. Okay, like I just have to do 5 minutes and then I can do whatever's motivating, and then keep increasing it. Some kids, maybe you do then 6 minutes, then 7 minutes. Other children, you can kind of jump from 5 to 10 minutes. So kind of depending on that. And then what was the second part of that question?
Well, so that was one part. The other, and then another problem he says is that when he has virtual tutoring sessions, he often gets distracted, like brings toys in with him and fidgets, with etc. But any advice or tips on those challenges? It seems like they obviously go together.
Yeah, I think sometimes, well, I guess I would also wonder, are they distracted? Like, are they listening? Because they may look like they're not paying attention, but they may be paying attention. Because sometimes we see that, oh, you're fidgeting or you're doing stuff. I play with my rings all the time, but I actually am listening. So that could be part of it. And again, I would maybe kind of give breaks, even if it is in the middle of kind of like a class. Again, I think it would be better than to the child to kind of step away for 5 minutes and then come back in, even if they're missing something. Because before, if they're missing all of the hour because they're having such a hard time attending, that I would say that it would be more beneficial to maybe miss out 10 minutes, but get that break that you need.
That sounds very, and it sounds like it's also very much on like, as you said, that they might still be paying attention. So it's a lot about communication as well, and making sure that, it's okay to stop and ask those questions.
Yeah,
For clarity.
I would ask your child, maybe sit in and maybe ask your child a couple of questions, maybe the next day, so it doesn't feel like it's too much of like a interrogation, and see if they're absorbing any of that information.
That's totally fair. And something that I before we get to the next question here, something that I actually really liked, and the mindfulness video, you said that mind bubble was very interesting and very nice. But you obviously talked about how towards the end of your presentation as well, how it's okay for sometimes as the parent as well to take a breath, like getting them out at 7:30, something you could do outside, like when you're trying to get all your to-dos, and you feel that kind of stress, and those thought bubbles almost could kind of compile. Just I guess I want to make sure that you highlight or speak to the importance of also how the parents can kind of take some of these upon themselves, whether they need it or not, to also be kind of, teacher sees, student does, kind of like that. If they do it and they're trying to practice it as well, it might help to, their children and that student, working through some of these difficult issues that they're obviously working through.
Exactly. Have it be something that you guys do together.
No, absolutely. Okay, so I have a question for you again, Jack, but I want to give Debbie, because Debbie has a question here as well. It's more so of kind of the reception that you feel like you've gotten for the Just Say Hi program so far, with the student body. Do you kind of see where you're kind of going with it in certain demographics, or how you hope for it to kind of expand?
Sure. So we are now what I would say in Just Say Hi 3.0. Just Say Hi 1.0 originated in partnership with NYC DOE back in 2016 and has evolved and morphed. And then 2.0 was right before the pandemic, and it was in about 100 schools. And we were collecting data, et cetera. This all predated me personally. And then the pandemic hit, and clearly schools became overwhelmed with really, really big issues. And so we took that time to hunker down, and I was hired during the pandemic, and we took that time to really spend revisiting, expanding, and broadening our resources and the lesson plans. And it's now the 3.0 is really awesome. So we're now pushing it back out into the schools, and so it's the new face of it is now being used and taught. And so we're in that state of everybody sort of, I would say, almost sort of piloting the 3.0. And we're also piloting it in Chicago, but we're pushing into schools throughout NYC DOE, and anyone who can, help advocate from inside as a parent of a student with a disability, that would be great, because NYC DOE is where the origins are. And we hope and expect to be in all 1,800 schools yesterday.
Absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. One step at a time, though. We appreciate it. But another question that just came in, and this one's for you, Jacqueline. It's so the question is, for a complex care cerebral palsy quadriplegic child, can you give some tips for inclusion and communication? Depends on the AT and one-to-one communication, but can you give some tips for inclusion and communication? Child is very social but struggles because it depends on others.
It depends on other people engaging.
Child is very social but struggles because it depends on others. I think for maybe for depends on the one-to-one or the actual.
Okay. I would maybe start with maybe like, I think my first thing is like kind of like finding your people. So for example, I'm from New York, lived there for a while. I moved down to North Carolina. And so I joined a LGBTQ inclusive chorus because I like to find marginalized people because they tend to be more accepting because they've experienced different things. And also the theater group in general, I always find to be more accepting. So maybe something like that, like instead of it just being like very open or in school or something like that, like an occupation they're interested in. And so this way, maybe it's a little bit, it's not so open and they can be in a club or, you know, a different activity that they're involved with. And you know, finding people who are open, again, the theater community. You know, therefore it's kind of there is a reason why everyone is getting together. Everyone is getting together because we all like to sing. So I think that commonality is really important. And I think that helps with the socialness. So I would maybe try something like that. And also, if you want to go more in depth in any of these questions, please feel free to email me. I would be more than happy to help anyone and go back and forth. Sometimes it's hard to answer these types of questions. So please feel free to email me. I would be more than happy to answer any questions.
That's very funny. I just recommend it as well. I'll make sure to, as everyone, just so you know, as we talked about, I will send out with the recap email with Jacqueline's information. So don't worry about it. But we do have time for one more question. Sorry, Debbie, you trying to just get.
Yeah, teacher, I'm raising my hand. So I just wanted to also say to Chris that the research shows in terms of having disability inclusion programs in schools like Just Say Hi, that all students benefit. Students with disabilities feel more welcomed and more included and a sense of belonging, which has huge impact research-wise, we know, has a huge impact on adult wellness in terms of a sense of belonging as kids, as students, and students without disabilities benefit because they're acquiring life skills in terms of learning how to be an ally. And as we all know, the disability community is non-discriminatory. Any of us can join at any time due to aging, accident, illness, or trauma. So the Just Say Hi program, I think overall students, students benefit in ways that they won't even, that they know now, but will truly understand later as well.
Absolutely appreciate that, Debbie. And so we have time for just one more question, and I know, and just this question is what kind of games or activities I can buy for a kid with autism. I know we have that slide, so don't worry, it's going to be recorded, and we'll make sure to highlight that. But if Jacqueline, you can kind of, if you can kind of just, you know, maybe your top game of choice or just something that's easy to start out with for everyone in the family.
Yes, there is a website called Therapy Shop, spelled SHOPPEE, I believe, or maybe one E. You'll find
I'll search it. I'll find it.
Yeah. They have like a treasure trove of just everything, and they have it categorized in different things. I could spend all day on that. So that's a wonderful site. Like slime. Any type of slime, kinetic sand is fantastic. They have the different, I think they're actually kind of more geared towards babies, but no one cares. Kind of like those like sensory pads that have gel inside that you can kind of squish around. I've also made them with hair gel, and you want to like use a couple of Ziploc bags, but you just stick a bunch of hair gel and then you put things inside the bag and then they can squish around on it and it's happy days for everyone. So yeah, I would say a lot of different kind of sensory activities. Oh, a body sock. That is kind of similar to the Lycra sheet, except it's like a full thing that you go inside and then the kids are all like this in this whole body sock. I've never seen a child not like a body sock.
That's awesome. And they sound relatively inexpensive and just simple, but fun and a good way to start out. So I'm glad. Well, Jacqueline and Debbie and everyone, Jacqueline, we could talk your ear off for, I have, a list of more questions for you, but unfortunately we are out of time. But I want to thank everyone for joining and give a special thank you to Jacqueline for being with us tonight. We really appreciated your insight, your expertise, and your knowledge. And I'm sure everyone will really, enjoy watching this presentation back. In terms of, like Debbie said, we don't have a session next week on the 8th. That's election day. So
Everybody vote.
Everybody vote. But,
Everybody vote.
we'll be back for our final part of this 3-part series with Cerebral Palsy Foundation on November 15th. As Debbie said, with our special guest will be Katrina Hazel. So we are excited for that. But otherwise, be on the lookout for any recap emails and such from us regarding tonight's session. But otherwise, we hope you have a wonderful evening and everyone hope is all as well.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. And for whoever asked, yes, we're piloting the Just Say Hi in Chicago now, and we are branching out, looking to branch out nationally. So contact me if you have hot contacts.